All right, what is going on, guys? It is time for another episode of the Chasing Waypoints podcast. And well, it has been a minute. I know you guys haven't heard my voice in some time. I know you missed me. They're 100%. What's been up to? Well, as you can see it, if you guys are watching on YouTube, Riverside, or any of the other podcast video platforms, yeah, you can see it. We've got a new studio layout. We've got some new lighting. We've got some stuff. I think, maybe it looks like we know what we're doing, but that is not why we are gathered here today. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm going to start turning down the party. Let's get right into it. So one of the things that over the last few days I've been thinking about, and this conversation keeps coming up. We were recently at Sonora Rally School, and we had a moment to kind of sit and chat with Darren Skelton, owner, creator, one of the creators of the Sonora Rally. And interesting enough, we were talking about, the growth of the sport and the direction of the sport and the things are going. And now you guys are probably picking up that this has been kind of an ongoing theme over the last few episodes, sporadic, but I've talked about it, is a lot of this stuff. So let me get, let's just get rid of the party. Now it's just us. So it's been a kind of an interesting journey, so to speak, is the growth of the sport of rally. There is a lot of discovery going on. There's still like a growing thing. And for instance, the amount of attention that the Dakar and the U.S. entrance into the Dakar Rally is bringing to the sport here stateside is huge. More and more people are curious about it, and more people are thinking, wow, this is, it's kind of a new form. We've been doing the same thing over and over again for so many years, but there's a certain lane, a certain thing where people are, we're afraid of change. We're creatures of habit, right? So the idea is that, okay, well, what needs to happen for this sport to grow? And that's kind of a different, there's different facets to that conversation. Well, is it the cost of entry? Is it the complexity of the sport? Is it the equipment? Okay, money is no object. I'm good to try something new, but what do I put on my bike? And these conversations kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And then I remembered, I go, wait a minute. There's a guy I know that started a podcast and has been doing this for, I believe the first episode was 2 years after the creation of Chasing Waypoints. And I said, it's time to kind of reboot. It's time to get things back on track. It's time to do things a little bit differently and really focus on the growth. And the growth of the channel has been amazing. It's this, again, if you would have asked me this back in 2020 when I recorded the episode of the F850 versus the F850 GS versus the KTM 790, that this would grow into what it is today. I don't know. I'd already been involved with rally for a few years, and it was kind of a crazy thing, how this whole thing got started. But now, the amount of reach that the podcast has gained, not just here in the US, which, interesting enough, the US compared to the world is the one that's behind the curve on rally raids. There's not as many people that are into the rally raid side of things here in the States as versus some of the other countries that tune in. And that there's a very big difference there. I mean, like a staggering difference. Like, that's the only kind of motorsport they do. If they're going out on a Sunday ride, it's with roadbooks, or some kind of navigation. Here, we're following a GPS track, or we're going down the same old road we've been down 231 times. So there's some room there for this discipline to come over here and start. And so I said, okay, well, you know what? All right, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to where Chasing Waypoints started. And let's, okay, if we were starting this all over again, what would we do differently? And what would we do the same? And a lot of it we would do the same. Now, you guys knows, I mean, we don't have, you know, you didn't see the B reel. You don't see all of these sponsors behind me and all of these name drops and things that I've got to do, you know, as part of it. And part of that is I like it. And part of it, well, it's a little bit tough. Yeah. You're, you know, having to basically bootstrap this and buy this equipment and do all of this stuff, you know, out of pocket and to help the community grow. And so not a complaint at all, not anything. I mean, you know, it's I have my ideas of what I would be career wise and what I would have loved to have done. And, you know, there's still some of that thought there and what I could also be doing. But I do enjoy this, and I do enjoy the idea of the sport and the methodology behind it and all of the stuff that this sport brings. And it's closer to how I relate, like planning a route, going out, riding that route, and figuring it out. When I was a kid, I was the one that when we would go riding to Heréndida, just south of Ensenada, and there's this dunes area there. And I remember I used to love putting together the track. You know, okay, we're going to go into the dune. We're going to go this way, and then we're going to go this way, and then we're going to go over here, and then we're going to do this big berm, and then we're going to go down the beach, and then we're going to come back up. And then next thing you know, there's like this berm track that's been dug in after I've done, you know, so many laps, and now we're all riding around on that. And so it really, like, I thought about that. I go, okay, well, there's a lot more going on here. So what would I do differently than what I've done over the last few years with the podcast is don't talk so much about it, go out and ride. You know, that obviously seems like the answer, right? The obvious answer. Well, duh, you know, yeah, of course you have to do this. But I've dedicated a lot of time to supporting organizations and working with the organizations and working with Rally Comp, you know, and that's taken its direction, and it takes a lot of my or all of my free time. Or not necessarily. There's, you know, here's an adult moment. As adults, our quote unquote free time is much more limited than we think. And so that's just the life, you know, a life lesson. And so I think about that and I go, okay, what is the next, like, what is the next step? Okay, well, we need to ride more. All right, not a problem. Cove's in the garage, ready to go. F900, if you guys didn't see the video on that thing, F900 is at the shop waiting for me to ride it. I keep it at the shop. Not a day goes by that a picture, a question, or a conversation comes up about the bike, and which is awesome because that helps get people into the sport. It helps people get into adventure riding. Whoa, you could do this, you know? Yeah, this is over the top to some, and to some it's like this thing is the perfect build, and it just varies so much, right? So I said, okay, we're going back to it. So we're getting ready to support Sonora Rally. We're going to be doing it remote, and look for another video because part of the reason this desk is so big now is because over on this side, I'm going to set up basically the command central. I'm going to be running and working on the ops side of Sonora Rally from here in San Diego. Now, you would think, well, that's a physical rally. Aren't you supposed to be there and do all of that stuff? Well, I've been lucky enough to do support for rallies in Morocco, in Peru, you know, and really a lot of different parts of the world, supporting them from afar. And that's been really, really cool, is to be able to do this stuff. And a lot of what I can do, or a lot of what I do, even in like 2-3 years ago at Sonora Rally, when it was the W2RC round, we were basically sequestered. The whole race ops, or the PC, piece control, was separate of the event. It was in a hotel room, and you kind of had to be in the in club to know exactly where it was. And so that was, it kind of shed light on it. It's like, you know, you can do a lot of this remotely. You just have to be, you have to have a system. You have to do this stuff. And so as it comes up, because again, Sonora Rally is coming up here the 15th through the 20th of this month, March. And we'll be supporting it, and I'll do a tour. I want to show you guys, like, okay, look, this is what we do. And there's a lot of tools now that have come up. A few years ago, we did a video on a system called Zello that does push to talk communications. They have different companies, corporations that have been, put this into use. And I knew it was coming with the available. I mean, you literally start a Starlink home plan now, and part of the cost, they actually send you a Starlink Mini. So, I mean, at the time of recording this episode, right? So now all of a sudden communication is no longer exclusive to satellite push to talk, super expensive equipment and stuff like that. So we'll talk more about that in the episode. But today we're gathered here to talk about, okay, how do we continue to get the sport to grow? And well, the idea behind it is that, okay, well, we got to put out, there's got to be road books, there's got to be events, there's got to be things. And you know what, even if nothing else, even if it doesn't fall into place and things grow and things happen, well, the availability of people to go run routes and do all this stuff. I mean, just look at, if you're in the adventure community, right? Adventure riding community. Just look at what the Backcountry Discovery Routes corporation, company, organization has built. They plan out routes, they develop these routes, they have points of interest, they do the mapping, they do all of this stuff, and then people are chomping at the bit to get it. And then next thing you know, there are maps being sold, there are GPS resources, there's a lot of things going on. And it's like, okay, we're not far from that. The availability of these road books, the availability of doing these things, it really makes it interesting for people to go out and try this sport and do these things and, well, and get lost and try it and do all these things. But if nobody in the resources, if nobody is doing that kind of thing, then the sport will continue. If you think about it, it's like, okay, if I was to get into this sport today, I would say, okay, well, all right, so I'm going to spend this money on this navigation equipment, and I'm going to spend this money on preparing my motorcycle to go do this stuff, right? I need a little bit bigger of a tank. I need these things for my bike. And now, cool, what am I going to do with it? Oh, you mean now I also have to plan a route and I have to make a road book for it if I want to? Yeah, I'm done. I got better things to do. That's too much work. I just want to ride my bike for fun. Okay. So there, I mean, if we can remove, there's this thing in there's this thing in sales that they talk about, right? It's the hallway of objections. And there's doors where people, customers, clients, that's their objection, these doors. And your job as a salesperson is to close those doors and walk them down the path, walk them down the hallway. Well, kind of the same thing, isn't it? You have the excuses and the things for that. And something, it was a really brief, and I hope to have her on the show soon because she has done so much work to get to where she is at. And that is Sarah Price. We had a really brief conversation introduction, thanks to Darren Skilton at basically the welcome home party from the Dakar for Sarah Price and Ricky Brabeck. That was out at the King of Hammers, and everybody was there, and it was really cool to see everybody interacting and all that stuff. But I got a brief introduction to her. I followed the sport, so I know who she is and all that. And so we just briefly talked, and I brought up a little bit about the sometimes the gatekeeping that occurs in this sport, where people hold things close to their chest and they don't want to release these things out, or they may not be willing to help at scale per se. And she brought something up, and really it was just a quick point, was that yeah, but it's work. You have to work for it. You can't just hand it out. You can't just get in and be the best. You have to work for this stuff. And it's a very valid point. If you're going to get into this sport, you're going to do this stuff, it is going to be difficult. You do have to work for it. I remember when I first learned how to DJ, I had turntables, and really is for when I was first learning how to even beat match, I had a pair of turntables, and it was the most frustrating thing ever to try and get the music to match. It was the most frustrating thing ever. It always fell off beat. It always was an issue, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then until I finally gave up on it, and I finally stopped. And this was several layers of dust, a couple of years, everything covered up, but still dust all over it and all that stuff. And I remember that it was like this rainy night, and I just say, I'm bored. I'm going to try this again and just see what happens. And it was like I had been doing this for years, and every song was on point. And you just know, as a DJ, if anybody listening or watching this has done this before, when when the two tracks are on point, they're mixed together, that it's going to, and there's a certain feeling with it, and there's a certain something to it, and you just know that it's working. So I thought about, well, yeah, she's right. That was a lot of work to get to that point. And then one day it just fell into place. Now, the distance between those waypoints, right? The beginning of it, the dropping the thing completely because I figured I would never get the hang of it, to the next waypoint of, okay, well, let me get, we're just going to try this again, to then meeting, one of my best friends, and now, general director at Baja Rally, Mauricio Parra. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for that. And we had mutual friends, and that was the introduction and stuff like that. And so I thought about it. I go, what? It's true. There's work involved with this, and no sport, no nothing, no discipline that you ever get into. I mean, remember when you were learning how to ride a bike, learning how to ride a dirt bike, learning how to ride an adventure bike. You saw sand and you panicked. And then all of a sudden, 2-3 classes later, a couple of years later, and you would prefer to ride in a sandy wash that's comfortable. Like, you figured out how to do it. And so I think that this is going to be there's a direction for us. And I mean, just to kind of bring it full circle, because I feel like we're off topic here, but just to bring it full circle, it's like, okay, we've arrived at the point where the sport can grow, but there has to be a path for that growth, and there has to be some work put in. Now, a lot of times that work is maybe in the wrong place. We're focusing on the wrong thing. And so you have to look at it from the perspective of a new person coming in. And that is, okay, if somebody was to go drop a credit card at one of the retailers that sells this kind of stuff, what would they do from there? How do they get into this? And then why is it so complicated? Why are, have we as the community and rally, have we decided, like, look, we're just going to dumb this down a little bit for guys to get into it gradually? Like, there's no reason why somebody for the first time ever is looking at a road book should be looking at notes that are Dakar level, 3 notes in one kind of thing, right? That can scare people, and that could off-put people, like, never mind, that's too complicated. But if you ride out to that spot and then you show them, I'm like, yeah, you see how here it says, you're going to go across this at this kilometer, and then see the little note here that says in another 50 meters, you're going to cross over and make a right or a left, and then that is your path, and see that cap heading. Once you show it to them, you explain it to them, you're like, oh, okay. Well, on paper, back in San Diego, this looks nothing like this note in a wash out in the high desert at SoCal Rally. It doesn't make sense. Now, interesting enough, that is a note that I got lost on riding with Gnarly Dave out there for SoCal Rally a couple of years ago. But you see what I mean? Is like, until you go through it and you start looking at it, and now it wasn't a super complicated note because Dakar does a very good job of cramming a bunch of information. It was still, at my level, was still complicated. And so think about it as like, okay, well, how do we, get some more people into it? Or at least the people that want to get into it, how do we make that happen and not have them be like, yeah, it was a conversation at, with the buddies at the bar or at the birthday party or at the whatever, at the barbecue. Yeah, I tried it. I bought all this stuff, but I didn't really get it. So now you just turned 6 other people into non-believers that, never mind. I was curious about it, but never mind. I'm not going to do it. If John here had issues, and he likes GPSs and he knows all of that stuff, then why not, right? So I don't know. I mean, as we're talking about this, it's like there's a lot of information. I'm sure you guys think, what is he rambling about? We're back. The focus on trying to grow the sport, and it's working closely with the organizations in a different capacity. I'm, in this case, coming up, working with Sonora Rally, partnering with them to help with their tracking and with their ops and communication, doing that stuff is important because the rider safety side of things is very important at these events. And we want to make sure that, okay, cool. Well, the people that are in the community that are having fun. Further on down the road is going to be SoCal Rally. Then is going to be Baja Rally School. And then ultimately the goal is that to help proof the road books for the Baja Rally. And so at the end of the day, it's a kind of a crash test dummy situation. For those of you not familiar, when you do these rallies, a lot of times, like they just finished this up for Sonora Rally, is they go out and they run the road books and try and find the issues and make the necessary adjustments so that if somebody comes through that section, the note is not confusing. Because if the note happens to be confusing, if you think about it, a road book is a chain. And like any chain, it's only as strong as its weakest link. So a road book will undeniably always have a note that's maybe a little bit weaker. Weaker isn't necessarily bad, but a broken note is an issue. The arrow is facing one way, the cap heading says something else, and then the house is on the wrong side of the box. So what do you think? And that just named now is one of the situations that we've lived. I've gone through this with an organization at an event, and it was just a simple mistake. And those kind of things get caught up and can cause issues, and it takes a very savvy navigator to figure out how to quickly figure it out, how to get out of that rut and say, okay, I see what it says here. I see what it says there. I'm going to take off. And hopefully the next guy sees that and they follow along. Not that the guy that figured it out wanted that, because that was the golden opportunity to make up some time. But as an organizer, you hope that, okay, well, if they saw him go that way, then okay, maybe some more people will start going. And eventually it works out. But nevertheless, the community is there. There's a lot of people in the community that are really, really helpful. I just think we might need to step it up just a little bit more, but really with a clear focus. Like, okay, how are we going to get people interested in the sport, or people that are already interested? Forget trying to present the whole concept to people, but the people that have said, I'm curious about this. I want to try and get into rally, and what do I do? And so we're going to refocus. We're going to come back to that, and we're going to start doing that. But we're also going to come at it from the dual sport side of things, because the dual sport community is the community that will be most likely to adopt this. A lot of the people involved in dual sport and adventure riding are adventurers by heart. And the rally raid thing, yes, I don't have the kilometers as many kilometers behind a road book as the next guy. That's fact. And that's going to change this year, but that's fact. But what I do have is hanging around at finish lines, interviewing, we're almost 300 plus episodes now of the Chasing Waypoints podcast and interviewing all of these people. And there's a common theme, and that's the adventurous side of them. You know, they enjoy being out in the middle of nowhere. You know, like for instance, Mason Klein. Mason Klein got into rally racing because he just wanted to put gas in his bike and go and ride and just keep riding. And so, and here you are, you know, stage leader, stage winner. I've just, you know, multiple years now at the Dakar. You have Skylar Howes. Skylar Howes, the same thing. Grew up desert racing, grew up doing all of this stuff, but then, you know, knew that there was something more for him. Part of the American Honda rally team now. So not bad, right? Ricky Brabeck, same thing. Grew up desert racing, had a bunch of adventure stuff going and adventurous stuff going, right? And did a lot of racing. And they said, well, you know, we're going to try something else. And well, you know, multi-time Dakar winner. So it's out there. It's going to happen, but it's like, where are we at as a community to try and help that grow? And where I say we is like, I'm sure that, you know, the people tuning in. So Canada and Australia, you guys are one of the biggest listenerships for the podcast. And so there's roads, there's road books, there's things, you know, for you guys down in Australia, there's this one dude down there, Toby Price. Not sure if you guys all know who he is. He said sarcastically, that's won the Dakar multiple times, you know, and was one of the few to put it on the podium on his first attempt. Wasn't the top spot, but, you know, it was on the podium. So there's so much. But anyway, I'm rambling. I just wanted to it's like I had to get it off my chest. We did some mods. You guys can see that if you're watching it on Spotify video podcasts, or if you're on YouTube. If you're listening to me, jump on over to the YouTube. You can check out the new studio layout and what we've got going on. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to do things a little bit differently this year. And to kick it off is going to be the Sonora Rally. I'm going to reach out to them. I'm trying to formalize my plan a little bit as to how much I can share, because from an organizational standpoint at a competitive event, there's only so much you can do, so much you can say, because obviously you don't want to give away the route or give anybody a unfair advantage. So stay tuned for more on that one. We'll have some more information on that one. We will be putting together some routes. We'll be doing some rides. I'm thinking I might head out to the desert this coming weekend with the Cove, and just to go put some other, you know, more varying terrain, rougher miles on it. I've done some riding around here in San Diego, but as you know, if you live in California, you're just 2.5 turns away from coming across the lock gate and somebody somewhere in Sacramento saying, yeah, you can't go there. But it's okay. You can leave your dog poop wrapped in a bag on the side of the trail next to your Starbucks latte cup. And next time you order that, you should try it with, never mind. That's going to be a long drawn out joke, but yeah, California has a lot of political issues. This is a show about rallying, not about rally and dual sport adventures. This is not a show about the politics of it, except for when you get to land closures and things like that. And so that conversation came up in the rally group. I'll just touch on this briefly. Johnson Valley area, Jawbone Canyon area, taking a hit. You know, somebody decides, it's time to close that desert, you know, and it's an interesting, it really is an interesting topic. Someone voted them in, someone voted to have this done. Why are they thinking about that? Or is this some real estate deal waiting to happen? Because they will close down an area of the desert for the sake of, and the name of conservation, in the name of conservation, and then a few years later turn around and put a solar field on it because, well, solar is the new green energy or whatever. So yeah, and we live in California with some of the highest electricity costs, with some of the, I would think probably by now, some of the largest solar fields and green energy generation across the US. But yet for some reason every year electricity prices increase, more land gets closed, and that's all fine. So if any of the politicians are listening to this, here's what I propose. This is how we fix this problem. If you are going to close a piece of land that comes with a 100-year deal, 1 century, that land cannot be developed for anything else, cannot be sold, cannot be parted out, cannot be anything. And if there is a wildfire, if there is something, because Skylar Howes brought this to our attention about, some desert tortoises that ultimately succumbed to a fire because, well, guess what? They couldn't get out. Why? Because of the fence. Then you should also make a fence that lasts for 100 years, and you should have a response team that will cut fences open in case of emergency and do all that stuff. I'm tired of politicians that make rules for the few and don't listen to the many. And the majority of riders out there enjoy the existing trails. They don't have an incessant need to make new trails and damage the land, and they self-police and bring their trash. Now, there are, and just like anywhere else, there are people that do not abide by that, but that's the few. And even the few desert, like if I saw trash out at the desert, if somebody abandoned their campsite and I have the ability to drag it out to the trash can, because it makes you wonder, a lot of these places have, like when you leave Jawbone Canyon, they have collection areas there, then, okay, why not take it there? What did you do with all that time you saved? Did you make it home a little bit earlier, just in time for that commercial? Was the gas 25 cents or $1.25 cheaper at the local gas station, and that's why you were trying to get home? That'll never happen. But yeah. Oh, and that's the other one. Our off-road registration fees should be proportionate to the amount of land that we have. So if you close down 3% of the available off-road land, well, that sounds to me like I have 3% less of an opportunity to go out and riding. So shouldn't the tags on these bikes be reduced by 3%? I mean, right? Oh, well, that's money now. You can't do the money thing. I don't know. It's funny. I was just talking about the reach around the world and what has the amount of people that tune in from different countries to this episode. And here I am talking about our lovely California and some of the land use policies. And actually, I should say the United States and some of their land use policies, because certain states now are mimicking, and almost just like the car thing. If the car is legal in California for emissions and all this other stuff, it'll be legal in the rest of the states. Well, California happens to be the leader in land closures. Well, there's other states now that are catching up and that they're trying to say, well, we can do it better. So with that being said, guys, we're not going to go down that path anymore. Stay tuned. We've got a lot coming. Sonora Rally School is done, and it is time for the Sonora Rally. That is going to come up March 15th through the 20th. And then we're going to turn right back around and get ready for SoCal Rally. Stay tuned to the channel. Remember, we've got another episode coming up where we're going to show you what Command Central looks like and what I do to basically monitor these rally raid events. We'll get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. May not be able to show you everything, but at least you'll get an idea of what goes on behind the scenes. So looking forward to it. Don't forget, and remember, it'll make sense when you get there. Enjoy the ride.